Your Honor, at this time, I, on behalf of Watchman Jackson and Quinn, and with Mr. Reiner's understanding and consent, would ask to withdraw as counsel's record.
We're going to court in Los Angeles to look at the arraignment for Nick Reiner. He has been charged with the murder of his parents. I did a podcast on that right before we took a break for the holidays. It's on the Emily Show channel, which gave us a, I hope, grounded perspective of these are the things we know so far, and this is where the case is likely going to go. This case, more than a lot of cases I've seen recently, has really pulled in all of the speculation. All of the internet is all of a sudden an expert in addiction, recovery, narcotics, family dynamics, Hollywood, politics, police procedures, you name it. I'm a lawyer. I know some things. I was a DA for a long time, but we are going to focus on what the process will be in court, not what the best headline is going to be. That's what we're here for. What's going to happen in court? And so what I suspected we would see happening before we went into the arraignment today was either the arraignment happening, which is defendant, these are the charges against you. Do you waive formal reading of the arraignment? And formal reading of the arraignment means reading it line by line, like reading the entire complaint, which their attorney has and then they see. It's very rare that defendants don't just waive formal reading of the arraignment, and then they will either set a date for preliminary hearing, for discovery, for a bail or bond review. Those are generally the things that will happen. So is a plea of not guilty going to be entered? And then what's the next date going to be? That is really what you expect to see at arraignment. But arraignments can get put over. That's what we're going to see today, and we'll talk about that. But there were tons of headlines in this case that he was going to enter a plea of not guilty by reason, and in Los Angeles, it's still by reason of insanity. Other jurisdictions, it's by reason of mental disease or defect, but it is a legally not guilty because of. I talked about that more in the podcast. It's too early in the procedure for that type of a plea to be entered. It's just way too early. So that's not going to happen. That was never going to happen. I don't know why people were saying that was going to happen, but that was never going to happen at this hearing. So we're going to watch the hearing, we're going to answer questions, and then we're going to talk about procedures.
Your Honor, we have a matter of housekeeping that I'd like to address in chambers in dealing with the 10 subpoenas that are outstanding. There are 10 current subpoenas that are outstanding. We would ask that body attachments be issued and held for each of the 10, specifically with subpoena number 4 on the list and subpoena number 10 on the list. Counsel for both of those individuals or those parties have appeared in court. They're here with us today. We have no principled objection to an extension of time for them to comply with the subpoena, but to maintain jurisdiction, we would ask that body attachments be issued. And how else would you like to proceed? Your Honor, at this time, I, on behalf of Watchman Jackson and Quinn, and with Mr. Reiner's understanding and consent, would ask to withdraw as counsel's record based on the conversation that we've had in chambers and the explanation that we've provided to the court in chambers. We feel that we have no choice at this juncture but to withdraw as counsel and ask to be relieved. The Public Defender's Office has been notified. We've had conversations with them. They are here. They're staffed. They're ready to take over. My understanding is they're ready for the appointment immediately, forthwith.
What is Alan Jackson talking about with the body attachments? We heard Alan Jackson saying that he had sent out 10 subpoenas and he was asking the court to issue and hold body attachments so that the court maintains jurisdiction. I, from that, understand that those subpoenas were for this court date. You can subpoena witnesses, documents, etc. for a court date. Hey, you're subpoenaed to come to court on this day, and it's to either interview a witness, serve a witness with further subpoena, ask a witness for documents, what have you. And we saw that there were several attorneys in court responding to those subpoenas. What does issuing and holding a body attachment means? It extends the subpoena. If the subpoena was for yesterday's court date, and if somebody doesn't show up on that court date, then you would have to serve them a new subpoena. Instead, they are issuing and holding body attachments saying, hey, your subpoena is essentially rolling over to the next court date. We don't have to serve you a new subpoena. This one is still active. So either your lawyer needs to respond, you need to respond, or you need to come to court and explain. But they're holding it because they're not just putting a body attachment in the system saying this person failed to appear on a subpoena. So it allows the court to maintain their jurisdiction over that subpoena until the next court date. Hopefully that makes sense.
As you know, my name is Alan Jackson. This morning, I had to withdraw as Nick Reiner's counsel. Circumstances beyond our control, but more importantly, circumstances beyond Nick's control have dictated that, sadly, it's made it
Oh, he wrote a little bit of a statement. Interesting.
impossible for us to continue our representation of Nick. I'm legally and I'm ethically prohibited from explaining all the reasons why. I know that's a question on everybody's mind. We expect the public defender to step in. They've already been appointed and very capably protect Nick Reiner's interests as he moves forward through the system. But be clear, be very, very clear about this. My team and I remain deeply, deeply committed to Nick Reiner and to his...
I mean, how can you be committed? You're no longer on the case. There's nothing you can do.
My team and I remain deeply, deeply committed to Nick Reiner and to his best interests. In fact, we know, we're not just convinced, we know that the legal process will reveal the true facts of the circumstances surrounding this case, Nick's case.
I mean, there are barely any facts known at all. So yes, the facts of the case will come out.
You know, a lot's been printed of late, over the last 3 weeks. A lot has been printed about Nick, printed about his family, printed about the circumstances, speculation.
Oh, it's a lot of speculation.
On December 15th, in the early morning hours, I was in New York at the time, and I got a call. Me and my team, we dropped everything. And for the last 3 weeks, we have devoted literally every waking hour to protecting.
Well, who was working on the civil stuff for Karen Reed then? Was that the other attorneys? Because you were supposed to have a hearing this week on that too.
Nick and his interests. We've investigated this matter top to bottom, back to front.
I mean, it sounds like you didn't get your interviews yet with any of the witnesses, but I am sure they have been incredibly busy.
What we've learned, and you can take this to the bank, is that pursuant to the laws of this state, pursuant to the law in California, Nick Reiner is not guilty of murder.
That was a very interesting parsing. Not pursuant to the facts, pursuant to the law. So they're going to go with NGI. However, pursuant to the law can also mean, presumption of innocence, but that's not what he's saying. I think that he is indicating that he thinks that an NGI is what they are going to do. He is very, very clear in parsing that this is going to be a not criminally responsible pursuant to the laws in California. And if you have not seen me break down not guilty by reason of insanity, which is what the laws are called in California, I broke that down in a podcast episode. We'll link it below. NGI is not guilty by reason of insanity. So that deals with any mental circumstance. However, just because Jackson thinks that's true, the law in that area is incredibly more complex, and it can be a jury determination.
Pursuant to the laws of this state, pursuant to the law in California, Nick Reiner is not guilty of murder. Print that. Print that.
The fact that he didn't say it 3 times is surprising to me, but okay.
We wish him the very, very best moving forward. And that's all I have today.
I'm here with Kimberly Green, the Deputy Public Defender assigned to the Reiner case. I want to say that on behalf of the entire Public Defender's Office, we are incredibly sorry and understand the pain and suffering that the Reiner family is going through at this time, as well as the entire Los Angeles community. The Public Defender's Office and the entire staff, our hearts at this time go out to the entire family. We hope that the community will also understand that this is a challenging time for the entire legal process. We ask for your patience, your understanding as we navigate this process through the legal system, and that we will be available as we can be to address your questions when appropriate. Thank you.
I'm here to make 3 points, and then I will not be taking questions afterwards. In our criminal justice system, every defendant is entitled to a lawyer who will zealously represent their interests and do so effectively. So too is Nick Reiner, whether it's Alan Jackson, someone from the Public Defender's Office, or any lawyer. He's entitled to that lawyer, and we'll make sure he gets that lawyer. Second point, in the process of dealing with that lawyer, we will make sure, the DA's office will make sure, that lawyer is provided with full discovery of all the facts that pertain to this particular situation, whether it's interviews, whether it's any type of video, whether it's any type of expert reports. We'll make sure that that lawyer gets the facts necessary to effectively represent their client in a court of law. And third point, we are fully confident that a jury will convict Nick Reiner beyond a reasonable doubt of the brutal murders of his parents, Rob Reiner and Michele Singer Reiner, and do so unanimously. Thank you very much.
Rob Reiner and Michele Singer Reiner's family has issued a new statement regarding the latest criminal proceedings in the Nick Reiner's murder case. After attorney Alan Jackson withdrew from representing Nick, 32, just before he was set to be arraigned on murder charges on Wednesday, January 7th, in connection with the stabbing death of his parents, Rob, 78, and Michele, 70, a spokesperson for the Reiner family issued a statement that reads, quote, "They have the utmost trust in the legal process and will not comment further on matters related to the legal proceedings." What is going to happen with this case now? It is going to happen in court. It is going to probably move fairly slowly until we get to a preliminary hearing. We are not going to have as much access to the filings because Los Angeles criminal stuff is fairly locked down. That is a no comment comment. That is this is going to be handled in court. We have nothing further to say. In court on January 7th, 2026, Alan Jackson appeared for his client, Nick Reiner, and talked about 10 subpoenas that the defense had sent out. A few attorneys were in court responding to those subpoenas. On the other subpoenas, body attachments were issued by the court and held, which means the court maintains jurisdiction over those subpoenas. It seems that those subpoenas were for the court date of January 7th, were served to the individuals who were being subpoenaed to court so that the defense has the ability to meet with them, interview them, get documents from them, get any evidence that they think they might have at the beginning of the defense investigative process. The defense wasn't just waiting for the, sheriff's department and police department to turn over information to them. They were proactively going out with defense investigators. I mean, Alan Jackson's not like knocking on your door and being like, "You've been served." But the defense investigators were going out and subpoenaing individuals. I imagine that those would be individuals or documents from things that were happening very close in time to the homicide or the homicides that have been charged here. So issuing and holding the body attachments means that the court maintains jurisdiction of those subpoenas until the next court date. There were a few attorneys in court that said, "Hey, we've appeared, we're in communication with the defense. You don't need to issue a body attachment." The defense, Alan Jackson, also said that they want all of that to stay under seal. So who was subpoenaed? Who were those attachments issued for? Who are their lawyers? All of that is going to be sealed. So we are not going to know at this time. Will we be able to figure it out later? Sure, we'll be able to figure it out later. Does it matter at this point? Maybe, maybe not. We'll see. But that's what holding the body attachment means. It lets the subpoena live until the next court date. And then if people don't respond at the next court date, The public defender who has now been assigned to the case, Ms. Green, has the ability to make a decision about what they want to do with those subpoenas, but it puts the public defender coming in to the case in the best position to decide what to do with those subpoenas in February. So those essentially roll over to February. The next arraignment date is February 23rd. Alan Jackson told the court he was withdrawing from the case, and then the public defender's office was appointed. At a press conference after the arraignment hearing was completed, the public defender's office said they were given notice the evening before that Alan Jackson would be substituting out. So the public defender's office had the attorney that was going to be assigned to this case in court and ready to take over the case, and she did by putting over the arraignment. Is it unusual that they put over the arraignment when a new attorney got the case? No. Is it better for the case and for the public defender's office that this happened early on in the proceedings? Yes, it absolutely is. So what comes next in this case? Well, there's going to be an arraignment in February, though at that hearing, other procedural things can happen. So the arraignment could get put over again. What does that do practically? It just bumps the case out a little bit more. But with bumping the case out a little bit more, this is a double homicide that's been charged as a special circumstance murder. It's not going to go quickly no matter what. So does it change things for the normal procedure of this case? No, it is incredibly common. So it's going to take time. The court date that I'm going to be keeping an eye on most is when they set a date for preliminary hearing. It will be interesting to see how far out that gets set. What else do we know? Well, the public defender's office said you can talk to our media relations. So I imagine we're not going to see much statements or any statements from the public defender's office going forward. They don't even have the discovery on this case yet. Alan Jackson said that the discovery was under protective order from the district attorney's office and wanted to make sure that the protective order allowed him to turn it over to the public defender's office. But it's not like he brought a file into court and handed it to the public defender. I wouldn't be surprised if someone from his office set up a meeting with the public defender and said, hey, this is the conversations we've had, and here's all the information that we have for you. And that gets done in a week or so. That's not going to be immediate. It's not going to have happened yesterday. So the public defender's office will then begin their own evaluation of the case with the information turned over from Alan Jackson. But what's interesting is what Alan Jackson said in court about withdrawing from the case and saying this was something that was required. It was out of his control. It was out of Nick's control. He did not say that there was a conflict on this case. Could he have said that? Yes. Did he say that? No. Did he say it was out of Nick's control? Yes, he did. Did he say it was out of his control? Yes, he did. The particularity of the words he used before, he gave a press conference saying that under the laws of the state of California, he believes that Nick Reiner is not guilty, which indicates to me again that Alan Jackson was viewing this case through the lens of whether there would be a not guilty by reason of insanity plea or an NGI plea, which then almost bifurcates the trial, where you end up with a guilt phase of the trial to determine if the person charged did the things, and then you end up with a separate part of the trial to determine if that person is not guilty because, and then the jury evaluates that. We saw that in the Taylor Shabusiness case. The first part of the trial was, did the jury find Taylor Shabusiness guilty of murder? The second part of the case was, did they find her not essentially criminally responsible for that murder because of mental disease or defect? And we watched that case. Was it 2 years ago now when we watched that phase of the trial? So there are other cases we have seen that come in. Most recently, I think, was Taylor Shabusiness. But you can see cases where somebody pleads guilty to the crimes and then goes through a trial just on the NGI portion. And we have seen that in other cases as well. And you can let the jury decide that part. So even if somebody pleads not guilty by reason of insanity, they are saying that they did the thing, but they're not responsible for the thing. So then the guilt would be determined, but I'm not responsible for it, even though I'm saying that I did it because. and then that would come in. So there are a lot of different avenues that can go, but it's way too early in the proceeding for any of that at this point. Thanks for joining me. If you enjoyed this episode and don't want to miss updates on your favorite cases, you're going to need the LawNerd app at lawnerd.app.com. That way you can stay in the loop on the cases that matter most to you, and you never know when you're going to catch feelings for a new case. So make sure you get it for free on iOS and Android. Thank you for being here, and thank you for being a Law Nerd.